All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chakwadash, double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers. So yeah, I'm back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. As always, continuing in the spirit of prophecy, which that spirit, being the spirit of prophecy, is actually trending in the planet Earth, which when you consider a spirit, which again, prophecy is just that, is a force, is a spirit, well, a spirit brings things to its animation. It animates things, meaning it brings things to life. Case in point, when you consider a dead body, well, the reason why it's dead because it lacks that energy, the spirit, to dwell within it, which animates it. You know, if someone loses consciousness, then the first thing they do is search out for vitality. And if the body lacks vital signs, then it's pronounced clinically dead at that point. Well, it's no different with the spirit of prophecy. As it go forth throughout the planet Earth, it brings things to life. Things become animated. Matter of fact, let me grab some real quick. To support that. Before we get into this, what's that? The book of Habakkuk, the second chapter, and I start at the top. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower. And this represents the prophets who have been pretty much delegated to serve as watchmen. And that tower really represents the internet, because this apparatus, this tool, it pretty much is set up through the satellites, which are in the heavens, which send signals. So that tower, which in the ancient world was the best vantage viewpoint in which to seek out the impending danger that was coming, well, it's the same with the internet. You see, here in this lifetime. Again, it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower and will watch to see what he will say unto me and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And that proves that this message is not of our own will. It's inspired by Yahweh, by Shemi Hawashah. Verse 2, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth. Now that vision right there represents the prophecies. Matter of fact, let's click on this word vision. The Hebrew word that kavwazan, and it reads vision, vision in a static state, vision and night, vision, oracle, prophecy. See, prophecy, divine communication. Vision as in the book of prophecy. See? So when you go back here, again, to Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter and the 3rd verse, for yet the vision or the prophecies is yet for an appointed time. But at the end, or so like the 2nd verse, it says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it shall surely come. It would not tarry. So the scriptures say, what? At the end, the vision shall speak. Now, when you go into this word speak, the Hebrew word here would be pa waka, and it says to breathe. See, blow, to breathe, to cause the exhale or breathe. So as we speak, as the prophecies are spoken by way of the prophets, things happen in the earth. See that? So prophecy is an actual spirit. Why? Because it causes things to become animated. It causes things to come alive. See? So as we prophesy, then you see things begin to take shape, to take form in the earth. It becomes animated. So prophecy is bringing to life really the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven have come alive based upon it being spoken into the earth. The testimony of Yahweh, which, by the way, that testimony is not some new idea. Really, the testimony of Yahweh goes all the way back to the beginning. You know, when you read the book of Isaiah, the 8th chapter, it speaks about binding that testimony. Matter of fact, let me grab that real quick, which I've been going into this a lot lately. But let's just get it real quick. It's the book of Isaiah, the 8th chapter. And I'm going to go straight to the point. The 16th verse. It reads, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. And the disciples represents beginning at the prophets to you believers. When you go into that word disciple, right here, it goes back to the word taught, to be taught. So that's the scene in which the Lord have set up to pretty much expose you to his wondrous works. But again, it says bind up the testimony. Let's click on this word testimony. The awada. It says testimony, confirmation testimony, prophetic injunction. See that? So this is the same testimony that you read in Revelation, the 19th chapter, the testimony of Yahweh. So that's proof that what we speak is not a new idea. That testimony rings throughout the scriptures. In fact, it really goes back to Isaac. When Yahweh went forth and spoke concerning the kingdom of heaven, which that legacy started with John, tells you how John the Baptist preached throughout the region of Judea, that the kingdom of heaven was at hand. Well, Yahweh charged his disciples to forward that same message, the kingdom of heaven. And you can read about that in Matthew, the 10th chapter, starting at the 5th and 6th verse. But we understand that one of the many incarnations of Yahweh was actually Isaac. So Isaac taught the concept of the kingdom of heaven. What do you mean? Well, let's go there. This is the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter. And this is Genesis 27. And I started at the 34th verse. It reads, and when Esau heard the words of his father, and who was his father? Isaac. When he heard the words of his father, he cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry. And why did he cry? Well, let's read on. And said unto his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. So we see here where Isaac was given the jurisdiction to give out blessings. Now, when you read the 35th verse, it reads, and he said, thy brother, which is Jacob, came with subtlety and have taken away thy blessing. Now, that word blessing to the naked eye, you know, especially with one of these wacky-tacky Christians, they are attributed to paying off the car note, which, you know, that's a subtle form of blessing. You know, whenever you receive any favor from the Lord in whatever capacity, you can view that as a blessing. But we understanding King's language, right? We understand that really the essence and very aura of this word blessing has everything to do with rulership. Now, let's click on this word blessing. And remember, Isaac, right, which we know is Yahweh Shai in the reincarnation, he issued out this blessing. So the Hebrew word there is barakah, and it reads blessing, source of blessing, blessing, prosperity. Prosperity. And that's another word that wacky-tacky Christian, or even those amongst you who claim, you know, to be Israelites, who would be considered the unlearned, you'll stumble at that word prosperity. You'll view it to have, you know, financial gain and advantage, to be well off with your salary or whatnot. Now, you can apply that, but we know that that word prosperity goes into rulership. Matter of fact, let's prove that. And I'm going to go back to that definition. What's that? The book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, I believe it's the 22nd chapter. 22 and 23, or either 23. Yep, 22 and 23. It reads, be faithful to thy neighbor in his poverty. Now, who is this neighbor? That's really Yahweh Shai. Scriptures say, be faithful to thy neighbor in his poverty. Meaning, here in his lifetime, Yahweh Shai is not celebrated. This is not the time where Yahweh Shai is pretty much glorified. They look down on Yahweh Shai. They don't acknowledge Yahweh Shai. So the scriptures is encouraging us to be faithful to Yahweh Shai now when it's not the sexy thing to do. You see? Why? Well, let's read on. That thou mayest rejoice in his prosperity. It says, abide steadfast unto him in the time of his trouble, that thou mayest be heir. See? That thou mayest be heir with him in his heritage. Remember, the scriptures say we will be joint heirs with Yahweh Shai. So we're encouraged to be faithful to Yahweh Shai in his poverty. When this is not the time to pretty much, you know, be exalted. We're not celebrated. You're not going to be celebrated when you cleave to Yahweh Shai. So if you remain faithful, that means you remain faithful to Yahweh Shai in his poverty. See? It says that thou mayest rejoice in his prosperity, abide steadfast unto him in the time of his trouble, that thou mayest be heir with him in his heritage. See? So if we remain faithful now, in a time where it's not the trendy thing to do, then we're going to be made heir with him. We're going to rejoice in his prosperity. So you see that word prosperity is in the same breath with what? Heir. That's King's language right there. See? It says, for a mean estate is not always to be contemned, nor the rich that is foolish, that's dealing with Esau, to be had in admiration. So we shouldn't admire this devil. No, we should be faithful to Yahweh Shai. See that? So when you go back, Salakia, let me pull this back up. And so you go back here. Let's go back to Genesis, the 27th chapter. And let's go back to this word blessing. It says blessing, source of blessing, prosperity. See? So now we have a better understanding of that word. It goes hand in hand with rulership. It says blessing, praise of the Most High. A gift, present. See? Treaty of peace. And that goes back to who? Solomon. Which Solomon's kingdom is going to be resurrected in the world to come. So that word blessing has everything to do with rulership. See that? So this is what's being resurrected in the earth. This is what's being animated. The spirit of prophecy is bringing to life the kingdom of heaven. And there's nothing Esau or any of you unbelievers, those of you in your incredulity, can do against that. Because once this word was spoken, then that set in motion the kingdom of heaven. See that? And this is why the temperature on the planet Earth is really that of war. Why? Because that's going to be the pretty much the segue, if you will, to the kingdom. See that? So with that, I got a little something I wanted to share. The vibration on the earth is war. See? Give me a second here. Slacky, give me a second. All right, it says World War III fears as North Korea adopts new nuclear weapon, dead man switch. And you can see this is from May 11th. And I got a string of articles, so I might not read them all, but you can see the headline. Let me read a little of this. It says North Korea has adopted a new nuclear policy which orders an immediate atomic missile strike if the country's supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, is assassinated in a foreign attack. The so-called dead man switch has now been added to the isolationist nation's constitution following the first session of North Korea's 15th Supreme People's Assembly held in Pyongyang earlier this year. So that's the lingo in the earth. So the reaction to this legislation that was passed is what? Fears, World War III fears. Again, this is the energy, this is the vibration in the earth. So we have it from MSN. It says, fresh World War III fears as Trump issues Iran with new chilling threat. It says, fresh threats to Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump has heightened fears of a world war. See? What's going on here? It says, after he issued a fresh chilling threat over the weekend, hostilities between the warring nations have long surpassed the 2-month mark, with an increased push for a diplomatic resolution to the war. However, new remarks from the president have left many feeling that the end may not be within reach. So again, this is the energy in the earth. War. And World War III. And that report is familiar with our message. See, we've been speaking this, and pretty much now you see it unfold. As I mentioned earlier, this would be considered the spirit of prophecy. And again, when you consider a spirit, it basically brings things to life. Again, a body is rendered useless without a spirit. So it's no different with the things that transpire here on the planet Earth. Or when you read the book of Isaiah, the 55th chapter, where his word is likened to rain that descend on the planet Earth. And once that feat is accomplished, once the rain descend on the earth, what happens? It make things bud forth. So that's the same power that prophecy has. See? So, matter of fact, let me get this right here.
However, 2 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday. Data from shipping firm Kepler showed one of them was a Qatari liquid natural gas tanker. Sources said it was heading for Pakistan to offer some relief after a wave of power blackouts caused by stymied imports of gas, and that the transfer was an Iranian show of goodwill to Pakistan and Qatar, who are both involved in mediating peace talks. Clashes have also continued in southern Lebanon between Israel and the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah, despite a U.S.-brokered ceasefire weeks ago. The latest talks between Israel and Lebanon are due to start in Washington on Thursday.
Right, so you see where it says peace talks will start, what they say, Wednesday? But that in itself is proof that World War III is coming. Matter of fact, let's go there. It's the book of 1 Thessalonians. Fifth chapter. In the 3rd verse, it says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction shall come upon them as travail upon a woman with child. Yeah, because when you consider a woman with child, it only advances, it increases towards the delivery. It doesn't retract. That's why birth is in the same breath with time, in which the scriptures refer to as the time of life. So a woman is pregnant, she'll be in her 1st month, a 2nd month, a 3rd month. It doesn't digress. It don't go back. It don't pause. No, it continues to advance towards the delivery. See? So this is why the scriptures is giving you this vivid illustration concerning this sudden destruction. It's going to come. There's no way you can hold it off. But what's going to be a key sign, if you will, a token, an indicator that their destruction is coming? Well, let's read it again. For when they shall say peace and safety. So we just saw in the clip where they're looking to have peace talks. To someone who's unlearned, they will view that as an optimistic moment. But for us in the know, we understand that that's nothing more than Yahweh Shai accelerating that destruction, which we understand that the destruction can't come unless key prophecies are fulfilled, and chiefly the MOTB, the mark of the beast. But once that prophecy is fulfilled, then this thing is going to come quick. What's that, Revelation 11 chapter? The third woe cometh quickly, which when you go into that word quickly, one of the definitions there is ready. So that's why you got missiles in the earth. In fact, his missiles already pointed at America. You know, while you people are oblivious and going about your day-to-day business as usual routine, meanwhile, prophecy is taking root in the earth. See, it says again, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Verse 4, it says, but ye brethren are not in darkness, that day shall overtake you as a thief. And why are we not in the dark? Because we have been enlightened through the spirit of prophecy. The mere fact that we speaking to these things right now in real time is proof that we're not in the dark. Basically, we're in wait mode and in the spirit of anticipation, anticipating the great and notable day of Yahweh Shai, which again manifests in the form of World War III. So this is the energy that's in the earth. This is from Express. And you notice, right, all of these articles is within this week. See, so things is happening, man. Scientist date. Yeah, it says Putin paused to stage major nuclear-capable missile tests in hours as World War III fears. You see that? So like, let me go back here. It says, as World War III fears skyrocket. So again, this is the energy that's in the earth. War, which is an indicator that the kingdom is coming. See that? See how the Most High work? The things that causes you people to be alarmed is pretty much glad tidings to us. That's one of the reasons why coming into this truth is likened to becoming a new creature. Because now you're wired to pretty much receive the evil tidings. What's bad news for the people is actually good news for us. See? Salaki, let me see something here.
Continued in southern Lebanon between Israel.
All right, so again, let's read this again. Putin paused to stage major nuclear-capable missile tests in hours as World War III fears skyrocket. So it says Vladimir Putin is threatening to stage an imminent major nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile test in high tension with the West. Residents in remote Peninsula, Kamchatka, have been warned of a rocket smashing into the Kura test site between today, Wednesday, and Sunday. This comes as Putin prepares for his annual military parade on Red Square on Saturday as Slovakia and defies a Ukrainian move for ceasefire by blitzing a kindergarten in the border region of Sunni, which I was looking at some earlier where this guy is sending drones over NATO nations. So the tension is high, man, in the earth. And, I'm not going to read all of this. The point is World War III fears, you see? Let's go back to this other one here. In North Korea, the same thing. World War III fears. See? See, some ad. World War III fears. So basically, this vibration that's on the earth is really due to the message going forth, going back full circle to the spirit of prophecy, which this lesson is dedicated to, which you can see the title of this sitting, Conversant in Wind and Fire. Now, that's actually an excerpt from right here. In the book of Second Ezra, the 8th chapter. And I start at the 20th verse. It says, O Lord, thou that dwellest in everlastingness, which beholdest from above things in the heaven and in the air. So that's giving you a glimpse into the power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. The mere fact that you have to look up to the heavens, he looked down on the heavens. See, verse 21, whose throne is inestimable. Now, this is concerning what? His jurisdiction. Meaning the Most High power seeps and lingers into all aspects. His throne, his jurisdiction is throughout the heavens, the earth, the animal kingdom, insects. You can't escape from the jurisdiction of the Most High. That's what it means when it says his throne is inestimable. That's not concerning the size of it, because carnally, with the naked eye, that would be your first reaction. As if you measuring this, you can't measure it. No, that's concerning his jurisdiction. It can't be capped off. It's limitless. See, it says whose glory may not be comprehended. And that glory, as it relates to this realm, is actually this truth. That's why the average person can't wrap their mind around it, which this links to St. John, the 1st chapter, where it speaks about how the light came into the world and the world comprehended it not. Which when you go into that word comprehend, it means to lay hold of with the mind. But, obviously this is also concerning his works. You can't comprehend the works of Yahweh. These scientists are still dumbfounded by the human body. And that's something that the Most High eventually is going to scrap. And we're going to have new bodies. So let's show you how far out there the Most High is and how ultimately you can't comprehend it. It says, before whom the host of angels stand with trembling. And the host of angels represents the high arching angels, which that word host in the Hebrew is tazabah, which goes into armies. So the host of angels is very fearful. And pretty much even to gaze upon an angel in his natural habitat, you'll give up the ghost. Yet they stand with trembling before the throne of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. And a quick nugget, who sits on the right hand of Yahweh? Yahweh Shah. So the high archangels even tremble at Yahweh Shah, in which the scriptures is an account where when Yahweh Shah encountered, it was a particular person who was plagued with demons, and the demons, they cried out at the person and said, Yahweh Shah, are you coming to torment us? They were scared of Yahweh Shah. And Yahweh Shah commanded them to go into the pigs. See? So the angels tremble at Yahweh Shah as well. Verse 22, and it's the point. It says, whose service, right? The Most High service. And what's the Most High service? The ministry. See? Whose service is conversant in wind and fire. So if you're a man of the Lord, if you profess to be a prophet, then you're going to, at some point, speak concerning World War III. Your service is going to be conversant in wind and fire. Why? Because that's the will of the Most High. Let's read it again. It says, whose service, the Most High service, is conversant in wind and fire, whose word is true. See, so that proves that the Most High service is this word going forth. It says, and sayings constant. Now, when you go into that word constant, it goes into really steadfastness. That's why you see us back again. You see us every week, beginning at the apostles. They've been laboring for over 35, 40 years collectively. That's an example of the Lord's sayings being constant. It didn't fizzle out. See? It says, whose commandment is strong and ordinance fearful. Right, because ultimately the message is the destruction. It says, whose look drive up the depths, and the depths represent America. That's the valley, the low land. And what's the look? The prophecies. That's why Yahweh Shah said, blessed are your eyes, for they see. The prophecies is referred to as a sight, you see, which that's the look of the Most High. See, whose look drive up the depths. And how the Lord going to dry up America? He's going to burn it with that unquenchable fire. It's going to be turned into what? A desert. It says, and indignation maketh the mountains to melt away. See, that's going to be due to what? The destruction. It says, which the truth witnesses. So we don't give a damn if you don't believe it. The truth witnesses. Yahweh Shah is our faithful witness. Now, real quick, let me grab real quick. I got this word conversant queued up. It's from an AI overview. It reads, conversant means having knowledge, experience, or familiarity with a particular subject. And that's what we have. We have familiarity with the subject of the destruction. See? Usually followed by the preposition with, it describes someone who is well informed. Hey, and that's why this is a constant message that goes forth to the point of ad nauseum. It might seem as if we're going over the same topics at times, but that's the will of the Most High. See, because the Lord is pretty much dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. So it won't be no excuses. As it is written, if I had come not and spoken to them or spake to them, then they would have no cloak for their sins. But now they have no cloak. Why? Because the Lord have thoroughly pushed forth this word. See? It says, it describes someone who is well informed, versed, or proficient in a topic. It's a form of adjective often used to indicate through understanding. See? So the very essence of being conversant in something is to thoroughly push it with understanding. See, definition, familiarity, knowledgeable or experienced. Really, the prophets are of old, which we already know. So we know Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. What's that? Sirach 36, let them know thee as we have known thee. See? Frequently used as conversant. You see, acquainted, versed. See, you're becoming acquainted with wind and fire, because that's the next stage. That was the Most High. That's the production that the Most High bringing. Wind and fire. See, knowledgeable, well informed. See, the antonyms, which this is the opposite of it, is ignorant, inexperienced. So those who are not conversing in wind and fire, they would be ignorant or inexperienced. So as we speak, we are actually speaking wind and fire into the earth. Matter of fact, let's get that in closing. That's Revelation, the 11th chapter. This is Revelation chapter 11. And I started the 4th verse. It says, these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the Most High in the earth. And that represents really the ministry, just to summarize it. The 2 olive trees, the 2 candlesticks, that goes into the candlesticks, the wisdom. The 2 olive trees, you know, you go back from an individual perspective, Zerubbabel, Joshua, but then you bring it up to the 2 kingdoms, the northern and southern kingdom, in which the prophets emanate from. See? So this is the ministry. Verse 5, it says, if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth. Fire proceedeth out of their mouth. Now, when you consider the legacy of the prophets, and most notable, you had Elijah, who did what? He called fire from heaven. That's in the book of 1 Kings 18, I want to say. But we have that same power, only this time we call in the nuclear missiles from heaven. And that goes back to what? Being conversing in wind and fire. See, it says fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. So ultimately, the ministry is calling fire from heaven. We're speaking fire. And it's literally going to manifest with fire. See? Matter of fact, let me grab something else real quick. That's in the book of Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter. I think it's the 29th verse. It reads, is not my word like as a fire, saith the Lord. See? So it's like a fire from a symbolic point of view, but it's literally going to morph into an actual fire. See? It's not my word like as a fire, saith the Lord, and like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces. And this is how the hammer, which, you know, is the symbolic to the destruction, is going to break up Esau. See? But it all goes back to what? This word. Which again is likened to fire. So yeah, with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chakwadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers, to the next time. Shalom.